Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, massive matchup Saturday. Ohio State heading on the road to play Penn State. Not only ramifications in the Big Ten, we're talking about legitimate college football playoff ramifications. Both top five teams heading into this matchup going to be an elite environment in Happy Valley. Ohio State coming off a bye, sloppy performance against Nebraska. I think a lot of Ohio State fans would certainly agree with that. Then you look at Penn State, they got plenty of storylines coming in as well. A couple of really key injuries, most notably to Drew at the quarterback position. Dill, we're going to get into this more as we talk about the Penn State offense, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Like, Drew's been good in 2024. Is Bo Prabula a little bit more well-suited to run the Coach Koldenicki offense for Penn State? Because he came in and there was a lot of things that you really liked, what you saw from Bo, so we're going to get into that. Really fired up to get into this game as in general. A lot of really fascinating matchups that we're going to see in this football game. Now, before we get into it, as always, I think most importantly, let it fly in the comment section. A ton of different ways you can see this football game going. Dill, I don't even think we agree on the outcome of this football game. So we're going to get into it. Let it fly in the comment section. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. The amount of support for these preview prediction episodes, it's been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, I want to start with this Ohio State offense going up against one of the best defenses in the country in Penn State. Most notably, the battle that we're going to see in the trenches. Ohio State, Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, they've made it very clear that they want to run the football with this Ohio State offense. They couldn't really do it against Nebraska, only 64 rushing yards, 2.1 yards per carry. It felt like they were just banging their head into a brick wall. Like, hey, we're going to run the football. We're going to figure out how to run the football. They really never could get it going. Now, I think the challenge is you're going on the road, playing a front seven that I think's better than Nebraska, specifically stopping the run. How do you see Ohio State getting this ground game going on the road against this Penn State defense?
I mean, I don't see any other answer besides getting Will Howard involved with his
Yeah.
legs. It feels like they haven't really unleashed that part of the rushing attack. And frankly, their offensive line's just simply not good enough to just kind of run a base attack on teams, like especially with the depth that they're pulling down into, losing two left tackles now. Like, they're going to need to have Will Howard get involved in this. I think, again, you look at how Penn State likes to play, how aggressive that front seven is. I mean, they like to crash the backside. Their defensive ends, like, I don't know that they always play super safe, if you will. I think Will Howard in some capacity is going to need to have more options to keep balls on read options, use speed options, do something. Because if they just go line it up and play base run scheme against this Penn State team, especially with the way Ohio State's offensive lines looked, I don't really see how they're particularly successful.
Couldn't agree more. And you saw Michigan. Now, you noted this before we went live. Like, Michigan had to go to a little bit of J.J. McCarthy last year against Penn State because they couldn't get the run game going with some of that base attack. We've always said it. Like, part of the reason that Ohio State brought in Will Howard was what he could do as an athlete. But we always said that I don't think they're going to run him a ton of games they don't need to run him in. This is a game where I think it is pivotal. I really struggle with that word, that Will Howard needs to run the football. That's number one. Like, can Will Howard get more involved and be that difference maker in this Ohio State rushing attack? And Dill, why I think it's so important is you do not want to be in third and long against this Penn State defense, because this Penn State pass rush is elite, obviously led by Abdul Carter. But if you're Ohio State, you're having massive problems in pass protection, specifically at that left tackle spot. Zen goes down with an injury, so they're going to – I don't know what we're going to see from Ohio State on the offensive line, but losing Josh Simmons early was a massive problem for Ohio State. You don't want to live, especially on the road, like loud environment. It's going to be hard to hear the snap count against an elite pass rush that is going to challenge you at that tackle spot. It's pivotal, very important that Ohio State is going to be able to run the football. I think the second thing is, can they find some more explosive plays? Like, that seemed to be working against Nebraska, and they just never seem to go to it again.
Why couldn't they get a vertical pass go? Like, again, he was actually hitting them, like that throw to Jeremiah Smith. Like, that's what you kind of want to see. And it felt like they kind of had it. Like, their guys, they kind of tacked on the field. Jeremiah obviously leads the way, but I'm really surprised they couldn't get to that. And Penn State, again, you look like they gave up a little bit, frankly, against Wisconsin. There were some plays for Wisconsin hit. Wisconsin hit a couple of them, probably left a few on the board. And I look like Will Howard's actually been way better than I thought he'd be pushing the ball down the field. So I look like, yeah, I'm surprised they didn't get to that more again in that Nebraska game. I think, again, when you're talking about trying to create some space, and that's going to be the key thing for me with this Ohio State team, is I just don't think you want the box particularly crowded. I think they're going to have to get to some of that. And again, Penn State has had their moments of giving up that stuff.
That's the nature of the beast. This is one of the most aggressive defenses that you see in the country that Penn State trots out. They create a lot of negative plays. They create a lot of turnovers. They change the game on the defensive side of the football. But the flip side of that coin is you do allow for teams to maybe hit some explosive plays. And it feels like Ohio State's going to need to find those explosive plays. And you said it best. Like, they were hitting them. They was there against Nebraska. The 2 times they pushed the ball down the field, they both went for touchdowns. And then they just kind of stopped going to it. It almost felt like Ryan Day was like, we're going to run the football or die trying. And you can't do that when you go on the road to Penn State. Like, you're going to lose that football game if you're going to be so stubborn to continue to run the football.
And as much as I love the Penn State defense, I still think you have some questions about what they can do on the boundary, especially with AJ Harris. Like, you wonder if he's even going to play. Obviously, he went down in that Wisconsin game. If they have to really dip deep into their depth, it's like, again, you look, I still almost think Ohio State's wide receivers are underrated. Like, yeah, we talk a lot about Oregon, talk a lot about some of these other teams. It's like, I mean, Emeka Egbuka is playing really good. Like, he isn't, I don't think we've seen this version of him in his whole college career, much more dependable. And then obviously Jeremiah Smith is just ungodly good.
See,
so
you talk about those two guys. I think they get the love they deserve. They're really good. You see them all on Twitter. The one nobody talks about is Cardinal Tate. Cardinal Tate's a wide receiver 1. That's a wide receiver 3 for Ohio State. That's another storyline. When you have 3 legitimate wide receiver 1s, it's easy to find some matchups that you like. Can Ohio State find those matchups? That feels like the storyline of this football game for this side of the football. Can Ohio State run the football efficiently, stay out of 3rd and longs, and hit the explosive plays when the opportunity presents itself?
And one last thing is, I think you want to try as much as you can to, frankly, get Jalen Reed out of the box, because I look at how he plays when he gets to be around line of scrimmage. He's really, really good. Very impressed with what he was doing against Wisconsin. So again, you look like the recipe. If they're going to have that type of success running the ball, I think it needs to start with their ability to challenge Penn State down the field, keep Jalen Reed out of the box, because then that at least gives them a chance to probably do it. But I look, with the combination of the way Ohio State's offensive line is playing, the way the front 7 in general plays for Penn State, if they can keep those safeties around the line of scrimmage, I think that does not bode well, frankly, for Ohio State. But again, I look, Ohio State's got the personnel to not allow the game to be played necessarily on those terms. So we'll see.
So let's flip the side. And let's first start with Bo Prabula and what we might see from him. Penn State wants to run the football. They want to use their quarterback as an athlete. Drew has run this Penn State offense quite well through the first half of the season. What is your take on the quarterback situation? It seems like it's going to be really hard. If Drew's healthy, it seems like it's hard not to go with Drew, because he has the most experience in these kind of games where, yeah, look good when Bo came in, and Wisconsin didn't prep for Bo to come in, so he had some success. I feel like if Drew is healthy and ready to go, he has to be the guy, with the caveat being that if he is dinged up, and the reason he didn't go back in that game is he just didn't think he was a mobile enough athlete with the injury. If he isn't going to give you that juice as an athlete, I wonder, I guess, what's your take on the Penn State quarterback position heading into this matchup here?
So, like, fully healthy, I still think Drew's the guy, because I think he does give them more athleticism than people probably like want to give him credit for. I mean, he can operate that, like, you had run that speed option, like they did it. It was effective. Yep. Like, again, like, is he the athlete Prabula is? No, but like, he's not as immobile, let's say, as like a Cade McNamara or something, like one of those quarterbacks who I think you look at, like, they don't clear the minimum hurdle, if you will, for being an athlete. I think Drew Lark clears it. He does a pretty good job scrambling. He's hurt teams doing it. But I also look like you want to be able to challenge these cornerbacks for Ohio State, because as good as I thought they were going to be coming into this year, they're taking a lot of penalties. They're giving up big plays. So I look, that to me, if you have Drew Lark healthy, I think you want to try to see if you can get after those corners and draw some penalties, do something. Now, the flip side of that is, somebody on this Penn State wide receiver room has got to step up and make it happen, because I think that's been, as much as Tyler Warren and those running backs have been awesome, I still think you need a little more from that wideout
But
room.
by far the biggest storyline in this football game here. Because you look at where you want to attack Ohio State right now, which is crazy to say, like with the talent that's in that room. You want to attack the boundary quarterbacks. Davis and Igbinosin cannot keep his hands off wide receivers on one side. Denzel Burke has not played very good the last couple of weeks on the other side. The big question, though, is does Penn State have the dudes in the wide receiver room to make it happen? Julian Fleming, we all know how talented this kid is. Ohio State fans know how talented this kid is. Has not been a consistent wide receiver for Penn State and really largely in his career. Dill, the reason I think it's so important is, one, that's where you want to attack him. But two, like, look, we know the passing attack wants to go through Tyler Warren. We know it wants to go through the running backs out of the backfield. Ohio State, they got really, really athletic safeties and linebackers to deal with those guys, where when Tyler Warren's getting after it, it's just because other teams don't have the linebackers and safeties who are good enough athletes to deal with them. You look at Cody Simon, you look at Caleb Downs, and you say, I think Ohio State has the personnel to deal with Tyler Warren at least somewhat effectively. Now, the caveat is Coach Kolnick is a genius in terms of how he uses Tyler Warren. He's going to put him in a lot of different spots, going to get him involved in a lot of different ways. That seems to be the storyline here is, one, can the wide receivers win on the outside? Two, can Ohio State take away Tyler Warren at that tight end spot?
Yeah, because that is ultimately the key to stopping Penn State, is stopping Tyler Warren. I mean, he is the
Yeah.
guy. Everything goes through him. He runs the ball. He catches the ball. He plays on the boundary. He plays in line. Like, you're going to see him everywhere. But I think you're right. That is probably playing into a bit of the strength of this Penn State team. Is, you kind of said it. I mean, Caleb Downs, elite at that safety spot, does a good job in coverage, does a good job tackling. Same thing with those linebackers. As much as maybe they haven't always fit the run incredibly well or played great inside the box, like, Sonny Styles has the athleticism to deal with really athletic tight ends. So that is kind of the question to me, because I also don't think Penn State can just make this game like a rock
Well,
fight
do
and
you
grind
think
them
that?
out
I
on
want
their
to
own.
dig into that, because I do think Penn State, it's hard to run just at Ohio State because they are very good in the front seven. Coach K is going to have to get in his bag as the OC here, because how do you want to attack Ohio State? You want to throw some misdirection. You want to give them a lot of eye candy. They fly to the football at the second level. Like, those linebackers, super athletic, very, very good. Can you give them some misdirection to allow some more space for guys like Nick Singleton and Katron Allen? Kind of similar to the conversation we just had with Ohio State's rushing attack. I'd say kind of the same thing for Penn State. Like, I think the two best units on the football field are both of these teams' front sevens. It seems like Coach K is going to have to get creative in terms of how he wants to run the football, which is kind of a conversation of maybe you want Bo back there. Again, I'm not sure.
Because
That
I think you're right. You look at the way Tylee Williams and Hamilton are playing right
dogs,
now, it's
man,
just like those
dogs.
two to me are the ones who are really carrying the day for Ohio State. Like, just teams can't really run on them. Again, you'd probably like a little bit more pass rush juice from those guys, and particularly probably the defensive ends. But right now, the way they're stopping the run, how physical those two are in the middle, it's a real problem. So again, I don't think Penn State wants to get into that situation where they really need to rely on the run, because just base run scheme attack is similar to how we talked about Ohio State. I don't think it's a great matchup for Penn State,
Yeah.
just because I think those two are two of the best in the country.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State's given up 2.9 yards per carry. It's number 2 in the country. Like, been a very, very, even though it struggled maybe a little against Oregon and Nebraska, it's still been a very, very good unit. All right, Dill, let's get into the pick here. I don't care. We can talk about the spread. I don't really, I care about who's winning this football game. Ohio State heading on the road, playing Penn State. Who you got here?
I think I'm going to take the Buckeyes, and I think I'm going to take them because I trust that they can possibly hit a couple of those big plays. I just look at the way Jeremiah Smith is so hard to deal with, and again, like, I don't think the cornerback position's weak. I feel like that narrative is like a little bit like lazy in a sense from this Penn State team, just because they had to replace a couple guys. I think it's a solid unit. I
They're
just think
quite good.
Jeremiah Smith is almost unguardable at times, in terms of, like, you'll get one or two plays if you can hit them. Will Howard can make it happen. They can do it, and I just look like I'm just been really disappointed by the Penn State wide receiver room, and I look like, if you're going to challenge Ohio State
Yeah.
right now, it feels like you need to get the ball over the top. For whatever reason, these corners have just struggled in their big moments. I mean, Nebraska had plays. I don't know that they're going to have plays against this or for this Penn State team will, because I don't know what they can do with that wide receiver position.
My question is, how does Ohio State call this game? Like, are they going to ask Will Howard to make some big time throws?
Have
Because
to.
I think Will Howard's shown he can make them, and they just didn't ask him to make them in the second half against Nebraska. I'm gonna go Penn State. I look at Ohio State, like coming off a bye, to look that kind of unprepared to play a football game against Nebraska. It's concerning, but I think more importantly, like you're going on the road with potentially like a completely reshuffled offensive line that is struggling in a big way against a front seven that's elite. It's going to be loud. It's going to be hard to hear the snap count. I think Penn State is going to be able to have their way with this Ohio State offensive line. For that reason, I'm going to take Penn State. And I think what makes me more comfortable taking Penn State than years past is I think their offense is going to be able to find some plays. Like this Penn State offense has been much more. They're top 10 in the country in yards per play this year. That's completely different than how we've talked about this Penn State team in the past, going up against teams like Ohio State. For that reason, give me Penn State. It seems like this game is going to come down to who utilizes the matchups that benefit them the most. I will see on Saturday. We're probably going to talk about this game a couple more times before it kicks off Saturday. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later.